Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the modern market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the XCOPY market. Big show today. Looking forward to getting to a discussion with our special guest for today, Bonafide Han, founder of Deca and Shape. We're going to be talking the XCOPY drop towards the second half of the show, fully dedicated to that. But before we get there, lined up for discussion today, we have meme coins correcting down across the board. China's plan for stimulus not yet expanding, which is causing crypto majors run to pause. Legendary's got a great breakdown on what's going on there. And the US Supreme Court refusing to hear the $4.4 billion Silk Road Bitcoin case, opening the door, unfortunately, for more government selling. We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs. And as I said, the much anticipated lowdown on the XCOPY drop with Han, the founder of Shape, who we have with us today. So stay tuned for that. But before we do that, just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is very, very risky. And unfortunately, we don't know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Tuesday. It is the 8th of October. How are you doing? How are you feeling in this very fancy Tuesday attire? As I said to you before the show, it's not quite coming across, but Tuesdays you see as a special occasion with these new artist drops. So what's going on there?
Yeah, Jim, Tuesday is for dressing up, even though it doesn't look like that on camera. It's a beautiful cashmere silk blend t-shirt that I'm enjoying on my skin. Apart from that, what I've also been enjoying this morning is a new book that I got into, currently reading. One of my favorite authors, actually, Harari, Yuval Noah Harari's recent publication, Nexus, A Brief History of Information Networks from the Stone Age to AI, basically following in line with his other books, and it's kind of exploring what we have done from the start, from the dawn of civilization to now, in terms of networks, in terms of building AI, and how that could impact us in the future, and where the risks and potentials lie with that. Very, very great read so far.
Very interesting. Very interesting. We were having this conversation privately. We don't know how you have time to read with a book in your hand at the moment. Me and some of our other friends have unfortunately slid into the audiobook territory, but we're kind of accepting it. Han, welcome to the show with us. Where do you stand on this audiobook versus physical book? Have you gone completely digital as well, in line with the rest of your life? Or are you still holding that physical book copy?
Oh, I used to have this amazing book collection, but now I no longer have it after I moved out, and I moved out of my old place. But yeah, I have a lot of ebooks, and but I really like physical books. For some reason, that is the only physical object that I really desire and love.
Do you know what? I was trying to make this point to Legendary the other day, but they were looking at me like I was crazy. The thing about physical books is that I think that there's meaning attached to feeling where you are in the book. Like, say you open at page 25 and you can feel that there's like 200 more pages. That somehow communicates something to you. Whereas if you just press the button and it opens up and you don't know, you just try and teleport yourself into the middle of the story. Are you in the middle? Are you in the after the first quarter? It's not clear, but Legendary refused to accept this as a.
I told you on my Kindle, when I'm reading on that, I both read physical but mostly digital, honestly, because I read so much. I read like 1 to 2 books a week, and it's not feasible to buy 100 books a year and store them somewhere. I always disable the progress bar. I don't want to know whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I don't want to know where I'm in the book.
You're a crazy person. What if the book just ends? Like, what?
Yeah,
like,
what the fuck? This is the end.
And you don't want to know when it's going to end, I guess.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
I have a really cool trick with books.
Okay.
When you get a new book, go and flip to the last page. I mean, if it's an ebook, you gotta like flip to the last page, but like flip to the last page and then read like the last paragraph.
No.
Yeah. No,
No.
but here, but it's really cool. So you forget about it. I mean, you have no context about it. But and then you read the book from start to finish. And once you get to the last paragraph, there's almost like a Proustian remembrance of like a memory, and you didn't really understand. It's actually a really cool effect if you try it, because you will not understand the last paragraph.
Okay.
But at the end, you get this like stitching of all the memories. It's like a really cool effect.
Interesting. It's almost like a deja vu that like you've experienced the deja vu. You think that it happened
Exactly.
before, but now it suddenly makes sense because it's actually reality. Go on, Legendary.
Exactly. No,
I sorry, go ahead.
So I've never heard this from anyone before, but I do it constantly, especially with fiction books, and it's incredible.
I
Interesting.
do the opposite thing. I read the first sentence out loud. I think about that. I really stop myself to read the first sentence or the opening line. And after I finish the book, I go back to the first sentence and read that, knowing all of the story that has unfolded in the book.
Wow. That is very interesting advice, completely opposite advice. Fortunately, this show is not about book advice because I think those two ideas are crazy. But unfortunately, it's also not financial advice, though we are about to get into the markets as usual. Let's get into the headlines and price action before we get into that XCOPY drop interview towards the middle of the show. Starting with price action today, let's get you up to speed. We've got Bitcoin, everything looks a bit red, unfortunately. Bitcoin's down 1% at 62.2. ETH is down 1% at 2.4. Solana is down almost 2% to $143. Nothing crazy there on the majors. In terms of the meme side, however, things are correcting a little bit more aggressively. Doge down 3%. Pepe's down 6%. WIF is down 5. Bonk's down 6. Popcat's down 14. Remember, Popcat went from 90 cents to $1.50 in the space of a week or something like that. So big moves there. Interestingly, Nero's up 20%. SPX, the Murad coin's up 44. Also MAGA, because Trump has overtaken Harris, or the gap's kind of widening on Polymarket at the moment. So MAGA is up around 20 to 30 or 30% now as well. So that's interesting to note. Getting into the other headlines, as we said, meme coins are correcting across the board. China's plan for stimulus has not yet they have not yet decided to expand the stimulus plan, which has caused not only the crypto majors run to pause, but also Legendary is going to break down what's going on in the Chinese markets because there's been all kinds of carnage there in the last 24 hours. And then finally, US Supreme Court refuses to hear the 4.4 billion Silk Road Bitcoin case, opening the door to more government selling. This is a case about bought by Battleborn Investments, a company that claimed it had purchased rights to the seized Bitcoin through a bankruptcy estate. But what the Supreme Court is essentially indicating is that they're not going to hear the case, which means it could clear the US government to sell the Bitcoin because it's basically in their possession and no one else actually has a right to claim it. So could be more selling from the US side, but we'll dive into some more of the details there in a little bit. Notable settles from around the space. CryptoPunk Nerdglass is selling for 45 ETH, showing that on screen for the people who are watching in. Remember, we're live on X video and on YouTube video as well. That is the price action. Those are the headlines. Legendary. So we head over to our NFT marketplace partner, Mintify, and see what is going on that side.
Absolutely, yeah. JPEGs are not really having a good day today. Bored Apes are down 1.2% at a 10.85 ETH floor. Pudgies are down even more, down 2.5%, 9.7 ETH floor. Clearly have lost that 10 ETH floor that they kind of managed to hold over the weekend. Azuki's same thing, down 2.7%, 5.19 ETH floor for them. Milady's surprisingly are basically stable. They managed to hold the pump that the gain that they had yesterday, 3.17 ETH floor for them, still up 14% over the last week. That comes after a couple of weeks where the collection has been struggling a bit. One of the collection who's also been having a pretty good week is Pixelmon, up 16% over the last 24 hours. That is for the Mons, not for the trainer collection that we're sharing on screen, and up 22% over the last 7 days. And another quick thing that I wanted to touch on, because yesterday we spent a couple minutes to talk about the field day that ordinals have been having, and quite a run up that was at the start of the week. Today is looking honestly a bit bleak on that side of things. Almost all of the pumps that we basically spoke about yesterday have corrected down. Puppets are down 9%, Node Monks are down 6%, OMBs are down 5%. So there's a correction going on the ordinal side of things as well.
Interesting. Fantastic summary. As you say, things have been holding pretty well, at least in the top collections for a while. Do you think there's any significance to Pudgy's kind of breaking the 10 ETH floor? They've been a rock above there. I think they've kind of hovered beneath, gone back up. I don't think there's anything necessarily to be concerned about, but what's your thinking there?
I think as soon as we'll get closer to abstract launching, and we'll see more of the launch partners, we've seen a few so far, and people will have a clearer idea of the incentive structure there. That will, if if that looks good, we'll see more price action on that side as well. I feel like they have a different, maybe a quick sentence on that. I know we have a lot of things to get into, but quick sentence on that. I feel like they have a tough balance to strike in the sense of they want a lot of activity from the get-go on the chain. They want to incentivize users, but they obviously can't be playing the same game that Blast did, because people would call out, "Hey, that's just Blast 2.0." And there's degens like myself who keep saying, "I want to run Blast back. I want to go there and farm." But obviously, they also have to think about not only creating a different set of incentives, but also thinking more about user retention. The hypothesis that Blast formulated with the mobile app doesn't seem to work out just yet, maybe. And the sentiment, even though it's gotten a bit better on Blast, is still, I would say, largely a negative one on the timeline. And that's a balance that Abstract and the Pudgy team have to find.
I think that's a great point. Blast going first is probably quite helpful to people because they see like the good aspects of it, and then also some of the negative sentiment attached to it, so people can kind of work around that potentially. Look, let's get into the headlines. As you say, we've got a lot to get through. We've got the 3 main headlines to discuss. Then we've also got the big conversation on XCOPY's drop with Han to get into as well. Stay tuned for that. But before we do that, guys, let's I'm delighted to shout out our sponsor for today's show, which is Gondi. Gondi is the premier NFT lending platform. Just yesterday on Gondi, there was a $121,000 loan given against a Sam Spratt skull of Lucy. If you are in the business of NFTs, check Gondi out to earn some interest as a lender on your ETH or USDC, or as a borrower, you can unlock liquidity from your Grail assets. So that is that. Shout out to Gondi. Appreciate them for sponsoring us today. Let's get into the meme coin conversation. Legendary. We touched on it yesterday. We knew it was a big deal yesterday when everything was going up. Things are also going down a little bit today. We mentioned already there's been a broad correction, maybe 5 to 6 to 10%, depending on the meme coins from in the last 24 hours. I wanted to share this chart from Murad, who has become what anyone would describe as the main character, maybe not just in meme coins, maybe on the whole of crypto Twitter in the last 7 days. It's the person who did the talk at Token 2049, explaining their thesis for meme coins. One of the reasons being that everyone knows a few people who have got into meme coins and made a certain amount of money. That is the thing that will entice new users into crypto, in his opinion, that being one of the main theses. And he's created this list, which I'm showing on screen for the people who are just listening in. And it's what he's trying to indicate here is the quality of a meme coin, at least in part, is attached to how few holders there are. So he talks about this measure called the emotional resonation per capita in each meme coin. And what that means is the fewer the people who hold it, the higher market cap to holders, which means those people, I guess, must be like crazy in some way because they're willing to go so far into and commit to something in particular. So this is his like selection of coins. Just wondered what your thoughts were on the pullback in memes, but also this emergence of Murad on the timeline and this very select selection of assets he's picked that he thinks will move upwards in the months coming. What do you think?
Yeah, look, in principle, this idea, market cap to holder, is interesting. I think that while the general line of thought is appealing, there's a couple of issues with that. One of which is that data could be massively skewed. Just need to have a couple whale holders, and that's not adjusted for that. So either look at a weighted average, look at a median, look how weighted average is evolving and moving over time. That would be really interesting if you take something like PopCat that has run to more than $1 billion and look how the weighted average of market cap to holders has evolved over time. So is it basically growing in relation with its market cap, or is it the same people buying more? Is it actually getting wider in terms of the distribution? Is the craziness factor, as you called it, the market cap to holder ratio. The decreasing one is an increasing one. So again, generally an interesting idea, but way too flawed to just reduce it to a one number and don't remove any of the potential skewing that is going on with the data set.
Mm. Okay. What do you think? Maybe just the final question on this piece. I think that's completely fair. Zooming in on one specific thing is not adequate. What do you think of this emergence as a main character? People always talk about each cycle having like a main character. Is this like indicative of anything to you? What's your thinking?
Seen people in the comments calling him evil Ansem, which made me chuckle. I don't know. I think that's just part of it, that we have main characters that, you know, we let someone else think for us, and
Yeah.
guide an opinion, because it's easier to follow someone else's call. And if it works out, be happy. If it doesn't work out, you don't have to blame yourself. You can always blame someone else.
Sure.
And I think we touched on that yesterday, with the median return on Ansem's calls being a negative 55% and average return being a positive 155%, but basically just a touch above the BTC performance. And yeah, I always have an issue with herd mentality and just following a leader. There's, again, great and smart voices, and I don't know Murad enough to know if they're one of them. And I frankly don't care about that too much, because it's just not my field of interest. But my issue with main characters is that we reduce an entire sub space of Web3, and an important one, because memes are culturally very relevant, to the opinion of a single person. So my gripe probably is more with main characters in general.
Can't argue with that. I like that take. Let's keep it moving, Legendary, because we've got a lot to get through today. I'm really interested to hear, you were telling me about this off air, your breakdown on the China easing the stimulus situation. Looks like it's not going to go as the markets had expected. Very curious to hear what you've got to share on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, first, why is it relevant? It's the second largest economy in the world, China, that is. A lot of stock markets looking to that. We are seeing currently the impact of that for European stocks, because Chinese markets have basically finished the day. And we expected to see more quantitative easing coming out of China. That didn't seem to be the case. And Chinese stocks have been trading with way more volatility, especially Hong Kong, as opposed to the mainland, than we're used to probably from European or American stocks. So, for example, we have Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index that fell 9.4%, worst day since October 2008, so since the Great Crisis back then, after having risen 11% over the previous 5 days. So if you would see moves like that in the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, people would absolutely freak out. Same for the tech index, tumbled 12.8%. Investor expectations have been building that the investment, the easing is going to be stronger coming out of China. And that is happening in a year where the GDP target is lower than in previous years. And there's also doubt about that, if basically that will be hit. And people have put a lot of money towards these expectations. Chinese equities basically had the best week since 2008, the best week in 16 years. And as these expectations weren't met, or weren't met just yet, the market was very, very happy to sell that off. We do have a chart of the CSI 300, the Chinese index there. It kind of shows you this massive increase that happened in September and October. It honestly looks more like a meme coin chart than anything else. And that disappointment did not only stop in stocks, it also spread across commodities. Did affect the price of oil, the price of copper, the price of silver, the price of aluminum, and also affected the price of crypto, because there's a lot of thinking that still follows that if China is coming, China is buying our bags, that will pump BTC. And a lot has been built on the expectation that they will be investing way, way more. And since that corrected, Chinese stocks corrected, and so it also had affected the price of crypto majors.
It's very interesting to me. Firstly, that's a fantastic breakdown. Thank you for that. But it feels like the market's getting more and more schizophrenic, including the main markets, where you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you read into this more than me, but they're not saying that they're not going to ease from what I read. They're just saying that it's not going to happen in maybe with the speed that had been previously expected. Like, yes, the markets were betting on it happening, and that's part of the reason why all of the positive price action had happened recently, but they're not saying now that it's going away or that they're going to start, you know,
No, no, no.
is that
They
fair?
actually, yeah, they said that they will basically earmark another 200 billion yuan. That's 24-ish bill in US dollars for spending and investment projects by the end of this year. They also continue their bond strategy, basically ultra long dated sovereign bonds to be issued in 2025. Again, breaking that down, more support for the economy, more money flowing in there. But it seems to be less than what has been expected in total numbers. And again, the other thing is that we have the GDP goals. They are the lowest that they've been in a long while. And they have been called into doubt that while the Chinese government is confident that they will hit them, actually analysts are doubtful if that's going to be the case. So maybe it's those two things playing together.
Interesting. Okay. I think that's super, super helpful, because one of the things I've been increasingly thinking is that we're just, whether it's crypto itself, whether it's some of these other risk assets, we're just tracking these broader macro trends. Like, as soon as people have decided that we're going to go into an easing cycle, price action seemed to be picking up, or even in advance of that, betting on that easing cycle happening is what triggered the positive sentiment again. So very, very interesting to hear what's going on in the East, because we also don't follow that as closely. So thanks very much for that summary, Legendary. Found that very, very helpful. The final headline for today, before we get into the XCOPY drop chat with Han, is this story about confiscated Bitcoin, which the US Supreme Court will refuse to hear the case of. So this is a story on Cointelegraph, where they share that the US Supreme Court knocks back the case over $4.4 billion of Silk Road Bitcoin. That's 69,370 Bitcoin, which was seized by the US from the online black market Silk Road. Essentially, what happened here was there seems to be an entity called Battleborn Investments, which is a company that claimed that it had purchased the right to that seized Bitcoin through a bankruptcy estate. So what they're saying is, we actually own that Bitcoin. You might have confiscated it, but we have purchased it at some point in time, and we have a claim over those assets. And what the Supreme Court is saying, at least at the moment, is they're not going to hear the case. Therefore, it's considered that this stack of Bitcoin should move over from a kind of an undecided category into a category that the government is more certain that, like, yes, we own this. There are no other claims to it. We can then sell it if we decide to. So that's just more of an update thing. I don't think that's anything immediate. You know how people were selling, or Germany, for example, were selling huge stacks of Bitcoin just a couple of months ago. I don't think this is something which is going to be happening tomorrow, but it is another example of how some of these government, some of these assets which have been confiscated as part of government activities might come back to the market eventually, because they ultimately hold them and may not want to hold them once they have the green light to sell them. Legendary, any thoughts on that before we keep the show moving?
Yeah, as you say, I don't think it's anything immediate, but it's definitely on the mind of some people. It's kind of similar like the HBO documentary that the market seems to be waiting for today to kind of have clarity on the question: Bitcoin founder still alive, not alive? What's happening with their supply? And I think it's the same thing here. Once this will become a more immediate matter, it will have an impact on the price action. But now it's probably just too far away for people to care.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I thought it was an important one to bring up. Good stuff. Very happy, grateful that we managed to get those summaries across. But what we want to do for the rest of today's show is get into the discussion on the very much anticipated drop by XCOPY on Shape. We are, just to, to the extent that you need to know who XCOPY is, he's a London-based digital artist. XCOPY was an early pioneer of GIF art via the websites Giphy and Tumblr, but today is most widely known as an early adopter of crypto art, having been invited to participate in the launch of the Super Rare marketplace in 2018. His neon-colored illustrated GIFs are instantly recognizable for their dark, punk-inspired themes of apathy and dystopia, and the distorting glitch elements and visual loops, which, due to their low frame rate, move and vibrate with a frenetic energy that brings the images to life on screen. Very, very iconic. One of, if not the most iconic crypto artists around. Delighted to be able to have Han from Shape with us today to speak to his next drop, which will be taking place on Shape. So Han, first question for you here is, when did you first meet XCOPY, and what can you say about that time?
Yeah. So yeah, XCOPY, the legend. Really, I mean, the father of NFTs, and when it comes to art, and um, um, so let's see. I'm digging through my history, and I think I actually first reached out on Discord and said hello or something like that, and then that led to some things that we did together, and that was a casual encounter. And then I met up with him in person. I think it was a year ago or more. Yeah, I think it was maybe 2 years ago when I first met up with him in person. Um, and yeah, what else can I say about that?
There's obviously a line to straddle here when someone is anonymous. Yeah, what are you able to say about that time to the extent? So you did meet up. How was that for you? Maybe just from a personal experience, meeting the person who, you just described as like the father of NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, the first meeting with him, um, uh, it was definitely um, it. I mean, he's kind of one of the heroes of the NFT space, right? And
For
so
sure.
when I first met him, I was like, oh man, can't believe I'm meeting XCOPY. And yeah, we just had um, like a great chat. Uh, I'm trying to, yeah, the reason I'm having difficulty kind of describing it is that I'm trying to filter what I can say and can't say. And
Sure.
what I can just say is, I mean, he's he's a really great person.
Well, that's definitely good. Good to hear.
Yeah.
How did you establish a relationship with someone who is probably the most revered crypto artist? And I think maybe this question maybe goes both ways in a sense, right? Because I think there's a lot of artists listening in, a lot of collectors listening in who, would like to figure out the best way to establish relationships, whether it's an artist with collectors, whether it's collectors with artists. Like, how do you go about doing that in a respectful way, in a positive way that both kind of parties are happy with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what's most important is that um, um, so in particular for me, the reason um, I meet with a lot of artists is that it was like deca oriented,
Sure.
or or um, because of my like collecting history. Like there's common ground that we could talk about a lot of stuff, and uh, what is most important is that it comes from like a genuine intent to connect with the people, and the artists, and so um, uh, and the thing that I think resonated most with everyone in the space is um, uh, uh, I often say that there's like for NFTs, I think there really are right now like probably less than like 1,000 people in the space, possibly less than 100. I probably not less than 100, but it's a small space, and
Mm.
so um, especially during the bear, it's like a great time, especially for everyone who's still here. It is a great moment to connect in a genuine way, like actually to spend some time with people, get to know them, because if you are here, it means that you really are one of the one of the people who actually believe in NFTs. So that has often been the common thing that resonates with everyone that I meet. It really does feel like we are the last people who are left with NFTs, and we are the rebels who believe in what it can be, and that's been a great way to kind of like discuss everything.
A follow-up question on that. Do you feel like there was a period of time, do you feel like maybe artists and collectors, both sides, kind of got burned by maybe the fake relationships then that got sprung up in more of a bullish environment? Because what I'm hearing here is, like you're saying, talking about the bear market as a great opportunity. Whoever's still around in that period of time must be people who actually care about the underlying thing, right? Because there was so much less financial speculation available to people. Even if some people are interested in the financial aspects, they're not necessarily, they can't be obsessed with it because everything went so quiet. Do you think there was like a hangover period where people had to like process all of these people who had been allegedly fans and then they went completely disappeared? Like, you speak to a lot of artists. Did you feel that when speaking with them?
Let's see. It is true that a lot of artists and a lot of collectors and basically a lot of people who had been participating in the market did disappear. And so um, uh, that and that's okay. It's not like a personal thing.
Sure.
It's more like perhaps the belief in the idea of a digital object was not as strong, and and I would say maybe less of a yeah. It's not that they were it was fake relationships. It's not that. It's more what I call like these are belief assets.
What do you mean
And
by that? That's a nice phrase.
Yeah, belief assets. So if you look at, for example, I mean, the first, well, actually, legendary. You had mentioned earlier about Yuval Harari, and he has the concept of like intersubjective reality, right? A lot of belief assets are, or I forget the exact word. It's been a while since I read one of his books, but a belief asset is like something that enough people believe in, and it becomes a real thing. And in the past, it's taken a while. So here's an example. So you think you own your house. And it actually is a pretty ludicrous thing because you have drawn some boundaries, or your local government office has in their database a set of property lines demarcated by certain lines on a geographical map, and it says that you own these atoms, right? And the concept of property rights, which first established when there were legal systems that were born. That's technically a belief asset. Your fiat money is a belief asset, but all of these things have become very standard things to believe in. A recent belief asset that was created was in 2008 with Bitcoin, and it took some time for society to accept it. In the beginning, when that white paper first dropped and the client was shown to people, I bet like maybe hundreds of people got it, like really got it, and very few people did, and I wasn't one of them at the time. But what I'm trying to say is that NFTs are also a belief asset. It takes time for society to accept it, and so it was natural that there was going to be a cycle. Lots of people who don't understand it yet will be gone, but they will return. Hope that was a very long answer, but
No.
hopefully relevant.
Yeah, definitely. I think is very relevant. It's a nice phrase and an interesting way to frame it. And it also gives people a reason to understand why some people might come in and out. And I think one of the things people often in this space are critical or get frustrated with others, and ultimately you can't control other people, right? But being more conscious that this is something of belief. Yes, people will maybe have periods of time where they believe more, then they have to believe less, and they'll have their beliefs questioned. But as you say, it was definitely a period of time in the bear market where the true believers were there, and maybe we're actually coming out of that now into a period where more people can start to believe again. Just seeing some comments in the YouTube comments. We've got DJ Soy saying, still does not own any XCOPY, needs to join the club. Want to shift this conversation into the XCOPY work itself. Before we get into the details of the drop today, just wanted to ask, Han, what is your favorite XCOPY piece. I'm going to bring up on the screen. Remember, we're streaming live on YouTube and on X video as well. And we have, I'm going to bring it up here. Just wanted to see the variety of work. XCOPY is actually great at this. Well, you know, one of the challenges in the digital art space is how should artists showcase their work? There's always like a link tree, and then maybe like different collections are in different places. Some are on OpenSea. One of the things people might not know, and I know this because I've kind of collected XCOPY from a long time ago, he'd updated his website, and you can scroll from 2024 all the way back to 2018 and see all of the pieces in order that they have been produced. And I absolutely love that because I'm a big gallery goer in real life, and I just love to see how people's work progresses over time. And so for me, this is like one of my favorite things to be able to do with an artist, to be able to see how their works change over time. But back to you, Han. What's your favorite piece? Do you have a favorite piece? What do you like the most? What style?
Oh, so many favorite pieces. I mean, it is really hard to choose when it comes to XCOPY. There are so many legendary pieces that he has created. By the way, just one thing about the website. This is like classic XCOPY. Like everything that he does, he puts like 100% into it. Like he could have created a normal website, right? That just has like grid of things. Oh no,
Sure.
he has to create like the perfect website. So in all the things that I've done with him, I've really been impressed with like the dedication he has to the art that he creates and everything that he does. Okay, so onto the most. It's going to be a boring answer. I think everybody's going to be like, "Oh, he chose that one." But
you're going to pick one of the obvious ones.
It's actually one of the obvious ones, but it's two that I'll talk about.
Okay.
They're almost like mirror images of each other. It is right click and save this guy, which is really one of the kind of like obvious like classic examples. But I can help you. One, I think that was so it's ordered by time. Yeah, it's pretty early.
It's 2017. I'm just about to get there.
Yeah.
2017. So why did you pick this one? Right click, save as guy. Here we go.
Yeah,
this one.
There it is. Yeah, the reason is it should start animating. Because he actually captured like so the common criticism of NFTs is why don't you just right click save the image? Which without understanding the full concept of NFTs, which is a valid criticism from if you don't dig into the concept of NFT, the actual idea that the token exists in reality. It's not just like a figment of our imagination. It actually represents that confusion about like what NFTs really are, and it just captured the essence of that criticism, and even like the mouth like mumbling, kind of like grumbling, complaining, that why don't I just save the NFT as a JPEG? I thought it just captured the spirit of the era. And then there's also like a backstory to this whole thing. So if anybody knows the history of XCOPY, when he started out, he couldn't get his art like sold. I mean, first of all, nobody knew about NFTs. Nobody thought of NFTs as like viable assets or anything like that, right? And so in the beginning, like he was like giving them out for free, and he sold things like for very cheap. And then for this one, I think the first buyer, if I remember correctly, it's like been a while that I looked at the data. He bought it for like $250, I think, or like $200, something like that. And also I use XCOPY as an example for a lot of artists. When a lot of artists are struggling, when they're new, they look at XCOPY as like, oh wow, like it must be nice to be XCOPY, right? But XCOPY walked through the desert for years when nobody thought about like NFTs as like anything but like some stupid thing. And he was like the sole guy. I mean, not sort of, but he was like one of very few people who were here just trying to do stuff, and he just kept at it for years and years. And then Cosmo, he bought it for I think it was like $7 million, I think. So it's I mean, it's such a great story, right? Of course, it's kind of a little bit too much into the finance, but from $250 to like I think it was 7 million. I forgot the exact. But
Yeah.
that's
Go on.
yeah. Sorry, I've been talking for so
No,
long.
that's great. I think
Yeah.
the going through the desert thing is one of the things which, in order, when you're starting out, it's very, very easy to look at the top executors in whatever field that you're doing and think that it must be so easy for them now. I think that's the thing, right? Because at some point in time, it does become easy once you've been doing it for so long. But appreciating the history and how they kind of got to the point that they are, I think, is super important. So that story is a good story to hear. Um, what? How did you? So I mean, this is some of the cool work. We've kind of scrolled through some of the other work, which I think is pretty cool on the website as well. How did you convince XCOPY to bring his art to shape? And we're going to get into the drop itself in just a moment. How did that kind of conversation go? How did that process work?
Yeah, it was actually like a long connection, like over a long period of time that I connected with XCOPY, and that was the foundation. Like we shared common principles and common goals of crypto and NFTs, and so that's the foundation. Um, I had actually worked with him before on a rendition of the right click and save this guy as a right click share, which is like the pixelated thing.
Sure.
And then we did the decal together for Deca. And so like we had that history. And then when I mentioned to him, hey, we're creating a chain specifically for the culture of Ethereum. And as Ethereum scales, everyone will have a home, and it is the choice of each community to go to which chain they would like to go to. And when I mentioned this, he was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" Like he is the kind of person who is very philosophically driven, and the idea of a chain dedicated for culture, art, and a people for people like a home for people like us who truly believe in NFTs. It really resonated with him, and that was the reason that he jumped into shape.
Reminds me a little bit of what DK was saying last week, where, to the question of like, well, why would you want to get involved with this? It's a more of a philosophical question, right? I guess when you're very successful, sure, there's a financial side to everything, but once you're very successful, maybe that pales into comparison when it comes to things that actually align with how you want to design your works moving forward, where you want your work to exist, the type of people you want to be involved with you moving forward. So definitely reminds me of one of DK's answer last week, where he just said, it seemed like you were well aligned and was happy to kind of support what you guys were doing from that respect. Looking at this piece itself, we're going to get to the piece, going to let you introduce it, Han. This is on the big screen. I'm going to share the big screen big. Definitely like a big impact piece. I'll give you the chance to introduce it, Han.
Yeah, definitely. And just kind of one other thing to mention is what I found with XCOPY is he is so artists. A lot of artists they once they reach some level, uh, some of them stop experimenting. They're very careful with like uh, uh, they're very aware of like how their work could be perceived, etc. XCOPY, I'd say, is like fearless. He doesn't care if he's the first in a particular like medium. He doesn't care if he's the first to take a step into like a new chain. And a lot of artists who admire XCOPY, I think, could say that, you know, oh, how does XCOPY do all this stuff? I wish I could, you know, do all the things that he's doing, etc. I think the part of him that has carried over since he started, or it's been part of his personality, is that he is fearless. He doesn't care if he's the first on a new initiative. If he believes in something, he'll do it. And so that's what I've really admired with XCOPY. One could say that, you know, for XCOPY, it's like, oh, he's got to be careful of like, you know, which chain he goes on, or etc. But that he didn't care, and then he believed in the foundation and the philosophy of Shape was something that I very much admire. And then the piece XCOPY SALADA is such a great name. So what is it?
That's what you can see on the screen if you're watching in.
Yeah. So XCOPY SALADA, it is 250 expressions of COPE. It's what does it mean 250? Well, okay, there are 250 quote unquote additions. How does it work out? There's various traits, and they're randomly combined with different colors, and they create 250 different random additions of expressions of COPE. What's so interesting about this work is that it's fully on chain. So it's all SVG, fully on chain, which means that, and we'll get to the next part, which means they can serve as building blocks. So that part is like really interesting, and we can cover that next. Yeah. And then the other part about this art is that it's fully responsive, which means that if you resize the window or whatever, you know, viewport, whatever screen size is given to you, it'll fill it and then give you like a great experience. So if you have a TV, if you have a digital frame, it'll just fill it and it'll look great. And personally, so we were looking at a lot of the outputs of the system, and it actually looks, I know like the flickering and all that stuff maybe doesn't carry over that well in a kind of like screen share mode. But if you look at it, all these versions, they have such vibe to them. Some of them, I mean, I absolutely love these pieces. Yeah.
Love it. I think we're moving towards a point in time where we're running out of time for today. So I think there's two key things that the audience will want to know, which we have to get to. The first is the details of the drops. You mentioned, okay, there's 250. What else do they need to know in terms of the actual details of the drop? And then second, you spoke about these being building blocks. And so I think that's where we'll go next in the last 5 minutes. So first to the details, Han.
Yeah, so go to XCOPY, go to his account, and then you'll see the XCOPY SALADA, or go to the Shape account, and we retweeted it as well. And then in it, there's a public premint. So there is a public allocation, and anybody can register for it. And there will be a random raffle of a chunk of the supply. And then a lot of the other supply has been dedicated to XCOPY's DECA leaderboard. And then XCOPY generously allocated 10 spots per artist for 8 other artists. And so they have also told their collectors. So there's 8 artists, and XCOPY himself, their leaderboards, if you're on them, you have a good chance. So go check your DECA page, and then we'll announce very shortly the list of 8 artists so that you can also go check that around the leaderboard. So leaderboard or the public print.
Awesome. Very important details. Just a final one, I'm seeing some questions in the YouTube comments. MDAC, thanks for pointing this out. There's a randomizer on the highlight website where you can kind of press the randomizer and see different versions of what you might receive. So that answers DJ Soy's question. Is each edition unique? Yes, because you can see these various options that might come through. Okay, final question, Han. You mentioned these could be building blocks. And you also speak a lot about how NFTs are programmable. So what can we expect to see more from XCOPY and Shape? What are you able to say? What can people expect in that respect?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he definitely has plans for things that he can do on top of these things. But the idea that these are building blocks is that all of this is on chain. So you can actually go to ShapeScan and you can invoke, for example, just by hand. Of course, you can do this programmatically, but by hand, you can invoke. Okay, given a file, get the URL encoded SVG. So it's all on chain, which means that anybody can incorporate it into any of their NFTs. You can read it and do things with it. And so this is the beginning of the web of NFTs. So there will be a lot more examples to come that will kind of show the way of how NFTs basically interlock, can be built on top of each other, and create like a crazy universe of NFTs that do things with each other.
Amazing. That is super, super fascinating. Really glad to have been able to have this conversation on the XCOPY drop today. As Han said, you can check out the public pre-mint on the XCOPY's profile at the moment. But that is today's show, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Legendary, as always, for co-hosting. Thanks to Han and Shape for being here with us to explain through the XCOPY details and some of the history as well, which is always very interesting. And thanks to our partner for today's show, Gondi, for seeing the vision for the modern market and Shape partnership. Remember, Gondi is the premier NFT lending platform where there are routinely millions of dollars loans given against autoglyphs, CryptoPunks, Videnzas, and XCOPYs, to name just a few. So check them out if you're looking to earn as a lender or unlock liquidity as a borrower. Thanks, of course, to all of you for tuning in today. Remember, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, for 1 hour live on X video, and YouTube. You can catch up with us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts too. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.